You know, we're entering a new cycle. We're closing Sukkoth. We're going to end on Monday evening with Shmini Atzeret. And I want to thank God for the people who are willing in this community to stand outside the box and think for themselves. I also thank God for the two men who have been bringing us messages once a month to help us apply the Torah to our lives as our Rabbi. And the Torah teaches us. Thank you, Alejandro. Thank you, Mauricio, who's not here with us today, but he sent his message. And for those of you who are watching from outside our community, today's message is brought by Mauricio. He's a bright young businessman and a family man who stands alone in El Salvador to bring light and truth to the nations. He speaks to us in his native tongue, and we have translated it for everyone to be able to understand, those who do not speak Spanish. The title for his drash today is called haMoedh Sukkoth is What is the Purpose of a Temporary Life? And here's what Mauricio has to say. I hope that this holiday season is a spiritual as well as a community delight in each of your lives. These weeks have been difficult for my family as the pandemic has affected many people who are close to us. In fact, hold on 1 second. Okay, let me get back to it. It made me think of the fragility of our body. Several people have died in their family in the last 15 days. And it made Mauricio think of the fragility of our body, which is like a sukkah, a temporary and fragile dwelling. The sukkah is built with cloth or wooden walls with a palm tree roof. But in essence, it's a temporary and even precarious dwelling in which we eat, where some sleep, where good deeds are practiced, such as being hospitable. In the sukkah, it's customary to receive guests whom we call ushpizin. I remember that our beloved Rabbi, particularly loved this celebration because it marks a cycle of renewal, a new beginning. And he taught us that this festival is also known as Chag HaAsif, the festival of ingathering. Zman Simchatenu, the time of our rejoicing, Chag Sukkot, the festival of the booths, or simply Chag for its celebratory nature. Apart from all the traditions of the holiday, it's a practical festival, which we can compare with our lives. It teaches us that just as the sukkah is temporary, so is our life in this physical world. We may decorate the sukkah with the best ornaments we can find, but in the end, it's still temporary. King Solomon, Shlomo HaMelech, said in Ecclesiastes 1:3-5, "What does a man gain from all his labor at which he toils under the sun? The sun also rises, the sun sets, then hastens to its place where it rises again." When we recognize our fragile humanity and our temporality, we are humbled. In the Torah, we learn one of the characteristics that the Eternal granted to Moshe when he said in Bamidbar Numbers 12:3, "Now this man Moshe was very humble, more so than anyone on earth." When we are humble, the Borei Olam approaches us, as it's written in Psalms 138:6. Though the Lord is high, he cares for the lowly, but the arrogant he knows from far away. When we are humble, the Borei Olam accompanies us, and his mere presence is the reason for his divine protection. Why do you think that animals don't attack the young when they're in the presence of their mothers or fathers? Because the very presence of its parent is a symbol of respect and protection for the cub from its predators, which is why the psalmist wrote in 91:1, "He who dwells in the secret place of Elyon, who abides in the shadow of Shaddai, the Almighty." Later, the psalm describes the consequences of living under his covering. What should our dwelling place be? Our goal should not be to live in a temporary dwelling. Our goal should be to live in the eternal habitation of our God. Sukkot also commemorates the unity of the people of Israel. In biblical times, it was a national holiday when the men made pilgrimage to Jerusalem. It was a reason for the ingathering of all Israel. With this in mind, only the humble could live together. Otherwise, they could not tolerate each other. And in the end, what unites us is his divine presence. Sukkot is also a time when we manifest and express joy. Both in ancient times and today, we rejoice over the fruit produced in the land of Israel. So this haMoed, this festival, has a direct relationship to agriculture, but in its deepest sense, we rejoice over the work of our hands. We have just come out of the days of repentance that precede Yom Kippur, and we can now rejoice in the confidence that we have a just and merciful God. Joy is not a state of having a permanent smile. It's a state of calm, peace, and confidence that everything will get better. At this feast, we also celebrate the universality of the Torah. As Deuteronomy 16, 13 to 14 says, you are to keep the festival of Sukkot for 7 days after you have gathered the produce of your threshing floor and wine press. Rejoice at your festival, you, your sons, your daughters, your male and female servants, the Levites, and the foreigner, and orphans, and the widow living among you. The Torah affirms in Numbers 29, 12 to 40, that it is a national holiday. In addition, as a reminder of the words of our beloved Rabbi, this will be the only festival celebrated at the end of time. As Zechariah 14:16 says, finally, everyone remaining from all the nations that came to attack Jerusalem will go up every year to worship the King, Adonai Tsevaot, and to keep the festival of Sukkot. The Eternal provides us with his opportunity to incorporate the rest of humanity into this holiday. How can we integrate others to be with us? As our dear Rabbi explained, through the 4 species that we use on Sukkot so that we can emulate the teachings in our lives, the etrog, which is a type of lemon, has a fragrance and flavor, which is comparable to a person who studies the Torah and they practice the Torah through their good deeds. The lulav, which is the date palm, its fruit has a good taste, but has no aroma, which is similar to people who have studied the Torah, but do not put into practice what they have learned. The hadas, the myrtle, has a pleasant aroma, but no flavor. And it's equivalent to people who do good deeds, but there's no Torah in them. The arava, the willow, lacks both flavor and aroma, representing those who neither have the Torah, nor do they do good works. When we decide to be the etrog, we gain 2 characteristics that made Moshe a recipient of the voice from heaven: humility, the ability to learn, and meekness, to be able to put into practice what we learn. That is, to put the Torah into action. Excuse me. When we can visualize the power, of these 2 characteristics that made Moshe unique, we conclude the book of Ecclesiastes 12. Oh, my goodness. So fear God, keep his commandments, because this is all for man. The end of the matter, now that all have been heard, fear God and keep his commandments. This is what being human is all about. These days have made me see the fragility of man. Before an almost invisible and undetectable virus for the Superman of the 21st century. And from the perspective in which I'm involved as part of the problem, I observe how much arrogance and pride there is in so many people who, even from the hospital, seek material pleasure in their work instead of seeking their physical recovery, and others who do not want to turn their gaze toward heaven or recognize that we are temporary and that one day, sooner or later, we will return to the dust of the earth. My question is, what should I do while I'm in this temporal body? By commemorating this holiday, I've concluded that it is good for me to fear God and to fulfill his commandments. In other words, to be humble and meek, to study Torah and put its teachings into action. By so doing, I will find joy and happiness in my life. We're approaching the end of this festival, and this is my cordial invitation to all. Shabbat Shalom, Chag Sukkoth Sameach.